Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. A big congratulations once again to Papega Squadron, getting 21 points from our first match of the day for the EMEA region here at the GLL Apex Legends series. That was a very, very hard-fought game, and at the end it was a bit of a crazy finish. Back on the desk, of course, with Glitter Explosion and Onset on the end. Guys, quick recap of that first game. I know you're still kind of recovering from it.
I had so much fun. Like, it was just so, we were,
so much fun
honestly,
too.
as soon as that first game started, me and Glitter looked at each other and we just went, yes! Like, finally, like, we've seen some competitive Apex again. It was like such a good feeling. But I think the one thing we wanted to talk about a little bit that we noticed and we kind of touched upon, and sort of an interesting point that developed, was some of the competitions that we saw and some of the legends that we saw being played. We did see Caustic. We saw a couple of Caustics, but I think we wanted to talk about the VP composition a little bit.
I think you and I realized it at the same time when we were watching the game, but we were very surprised we didn't see a Wraith on their team.
Which is the one legend
that's like not a thing.
We didn't expect to ever see taken out of the equation, so that was weird.
I mean, not only does her portal allow you a ton of extra time to live within the zone while you're taking damage, your teammates as well, but it also it gives you mobility. She's got a smaller hitbox. Like, there's so many things that make her useful, and they just said, you know what? No, we're good. We don't even need it.
We're going to brute force it.
And they actually did really well.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's great to see that people are trying to push or potentially change the meta, take some chances. Either way, let's take a look at the leaderboard and see exactly where all of our teams ended up. Of course, it was Papega finishing up top. They managed to get 9 kills as well, giving them a total score of 21. LG were in second. Alliance in third, then Virtus in fourth. Hot Drops in fifth.
Yo, I want to talk about one thing here that could have completely changed, and you know exactly what I'm going to say.
I do.
The team in 20th place, Samsung Morning Stars, and the team in second place, Luminosity Gaming. It was the first big battle that we saw. You could talk us through it, because I know you were rooting for LG in that battle.
Okay, to be fair, we were both very hyped about it, but I was rooting for LG. They were the team that I talked about from the beginning, and there was the most epic clutch up on Estesu's behalf. I couldn't tell if it was 1v3 or 1v2. Either way, she just completely shut down Samsung, and that was Samsung's opportunity. They had knocked 2 of her teammates, and she just kind of took on the world. Like,
and that's the difference.
That was all I was asking for, because I said, was it beginner's luck, or can they be consistent? She just showed up and you know, put me in my place, right?
That's the difference between second and 20th place. I mean, that one fight and that one clutch play, and that's what it comes down to in Apex, is those moments, those tiny little plays you have to make under pressure can completely change your tournament.
Guys, give me some of the inner workings of how teams decide where they're dropping, because the name of the 5th place team is Hot Drops, and I know that that is a very, you know, it's a contested topic within the Battle Royale community across different titles. And I know that in some titles there are gentlemen's agreements to drop in specific locations, and that hot dropping might be seen as a bit of a negative thing. In Apex Legends, is that the case? Can you talk to me about how that culture of hot dropping works in this title?
So it's kind of the gentleman's agreement that everyone has their own landing spots, because everyone wants to have as competitive as possible game. Nobody wants to drop out in the first few moments. Everyone wants to get loot and be able to fight on a as level a playing field as you can provide in a Battle Royale game, where there is an element of RNG in what loot you're going to get. The interesting thing is, as we get through tournaments, when you need to pick up points or you're looking to stop other teams getting points, the gentleman agreement becomes something that is only talked about. It becomes a myth. It becomes something that is history, because we're here to win money, right? Every team wants to win money. Every team wants to be up on that podium and picking up trophies. So as the tournament develops, you will see more of it. We saw a little bit of it from MVP, I believe it was, back in Poland, when they were trying to harass TSM a little bit at the start, which is brave, to be fair. But you are going to see it, because it's a legitimate way, and it is a meta game way of picking up points and stopping your opponents from scoring.
I mean, we're potentially, without even needing any sort of really incentive either, we could see Sentinels do something like that later on in the day, because they are a team that's known for their aggressive playstyle. So generally, I think you're right. You know, the players do kind of respect each other's drops and give them a little bit of time to at least loot up, because I think also when you're that good of a player, you want to take a fight that you feel like I actually won. Like, you want to have earned that fight. I think it proves just how good they are, their knowledge, their decision making, and
Also, you know, if it goes wrong for you, you look so stupid. Do you know what I mean? If you drop it, well, it's true. Like, if you drop and someone picks up a gun before you, and it's like, this was a great idea. Now we're in 20th place. We didn't get any points whatsoever. So it's kind of risk management at the same time. It's like, why would you drop on top of someone else and risk the RNG factor of them being able to beat you in a race to an armor, to a gun before you can, and you end up with no points on the board? It's not a viable tactic if you want to progress and be consistent in the game.
Well, guys, thank you once again for sharing more of your ideas and analysis. We are now ready to head on over to our casters to get Game 2 started off. Dreadnought and Bravo, over to you.
So, thanks so much, guys, and some wild scenes in that game number 1. You and I were talking about some more things that we saw. We saw some split drops. We'll get into that, but in the end, it's Pig Squadron. They get the win. Once again, a great performance from Luminosity, but as Onset pointed out, they're one early battle away from not being there.
Yeah, and they're not only one battle away. I mean, they're one battle away in the fact that we also got a Wraithless team. Like, that was actually a wild game 1 when you think about that. Like,
really
to kick things off, because I don't think I can get over that statement, because first of all, I'm obviously disappointed in myself in the fact that I didn't see that the fact that I think 100% pick rate character since day number 1 of Apex Legends.
I think every tournament match we've casted, certainly, and at Poland and in Scrim.
And I've done about every Twitch Rivals that's ever exist for, and I can tell you it's a true statement there as well. She was a miss over not only a roster that I would argue is probably some of the bigger brained and skilled ones out of this entire tournament, but and they held their own for at least some of that last round there. So.
And also a top 20 team in Poland, right?
Yep.
A team that's absolutely been part of the conversation. We saw some amazing stuff from them there. But also you have to wonder, you and I were just talking about it during the break, would a Wraith Portal have gotten them across that gap from North Sorting? Right, you saw they had the zip down, and it did not end well, right? They got shot from low ground and they got shot from the high ground. They got melted quick. Was a Wraith Portal what they needed to get out of at least that situation, right? It's hard to look at that in a microscope. We've got a lot more games to go, but already certainly some interesting results from that game number 1. If that's any indication, we're going to have an awesome set of games in Europe.
Yeah, it's still mind-boggling. I feel like when you think about the thought process of like, why not to Wraith, right? Like out of the other options, because I feel like if you're going to do anything, you'd be willing to go Gibraltar Path and the Wraith on top of that, right? Like, and just use that instead.
Before dropping the Wraith.
Before dropping the Wraith. Like, it is actually that straightforward, I feel like. So I automatically want to know, number 1, how many other deviating compositions are we going to have? Because we did get ourselves the double caustic, but does that continue for Virtus Pro? Both, if they have success, are you willing to keep doing that? Because I actually do wonder if that's going to be a benefit. Or inversely, if you struggle, is that something that they're going to be comfortable to be able to mix up?
By the way, here once again, we're seeing this. I'm so glad we're starting with the Luminosity drop again.
Really good.
Because you and I talked a lot about this drop and this split in between the rounds. We're going to get into that, but if we look at the areas, well, if we take a look, I believe I only see, right, here's one player at Epicenter now. So if I'm not mistaken, 2 teammates are now closer to Refinery. Excuse me, 2 players are at Epicenter, and it looks like they do have the third. Once again, it's Desu who's at Refinery. So it's the same drop for them. You and I were looking at this map, Dread. Anyone who's played a significant amount of Season 3 of Apex, if we talk about Epicenter and Goon Squad, looks like maybe I'm going to have to leave the match there. We do see a menu for a second, so we'll go ahead and find out exactly. Looks like, as we do see, I think a team that was actually playing in Winter Express there. So just it looks like teams having to get the lobby.
Little Taco. Yeah.
Teams they're gonna have to get that lobby reset, but that does give us, Dread, an opportunity to talk about this, because what I noticed after that, first of all, the reason you and I were freaking out a little bit on the first drop that we saw of this entire tournament and on this map is because you saw a ping on Refinery, but we saw them drop an Epicenter. So we realized it was a split, but this is a pretty big split. This is anyone who has played enough of this map, if you look at the upper right corner of the map, if you look at Epicenter and Refinery, this is a huge percentage, something like almost 70% of the playable area of the map in this quadrant. And if you look at the North American drop map, you see this as well. There are not 17% of the action on that map, right? So you only have one team at Epicenter generally, and maybe a team at Refinery. It seems like Luminosity has realized that they can own the entire top right of the map and split drop 2 high-tier loot zones and get away with it.
Yeah, and so to put that into perspective, right? I think that's where it probably gains the most amount of value. It's like, okay, well, getting a whole lot of loot. Okay, Bravo, how cool is that? Well, on Kings Canyon, we would only get 1 split maybe ever, sitting on the outskirts city, just on the side of Bunker, and then in Bunker itself, right? And you would go off, or maybe the pit in Bunker.
You can go something mid-river Bunker. We saw a few teams do,
But you never really did major landmarks, right? When you think about the fact that Epicenter and Refinery are some of the highest, not only loot tables, but also loot probability in terms of rarity, it's actually nutty. Like, it is almost the equivalent of them winning Thunderdome and Skulltown over Kings Canyon. And they get it for free
And we've
twice
seen
in a row.
We've seen them on both drops with no pressure. And you and I are also talking about with the amount, you've got balloons on every side, every northern and eastern side of Epicenter. You can balloon out. So if they do run into any kind of trouble, they can even rotate to something more like Overlook if there is a refinery drop. So right now, Luminosity Gaming has a huge claim to that northeastern side of the map, and I have to ask if that's going to continue to be the case because they got second there.
Yeah.
That's a big risk for the whole lobby to continually give them both of those high-tier loot zones.
Yeah, like we even saw, I think it was Tisanya with a devotion like full stacked, right? Like, and he had that from mid-game onward, which is not a very common thing to be able to see. I do think it is going to be interesting to see. Number one, do they keep doing it? Number two, does the world let them? Especially with the lack of deviation within drop points in and of itself that we've seen in Apex. It's very, the gentleman's agreement seems to hold up more often than not.
Yeah. And you have to think that it's very preventable. If one team decides just to send 3 to the western side of Refinery, they should be able to prevent that. You should start to see that LG player maybe start to scoot back, maybe even go more towards the north, and have to be driven back into Epicenter. But like you said, we're playing 6 games back to back. Is there enough time for these teams to realize, oh, we really need to change our drop now to Refinery? It's also going to require a team know the Refinery drop well enough and have at least scrimmed on it a few times to be confident enough in knowing that Refinery drop as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And also, I can't help but wonder, when we get to watch this as it kind of unfolds, I want to know which of the 3 are they putting in that position? Because in theory, Epicenter is actually one of the few point of interest that actually doesn't have its a beacon, right, to be able to complement that on the side of the Watson, or excuse me, the Pathfinder itself.
But they do get the Refinery beacon.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can go over to get the side beacon, and it's actually not in the building either. It's on the outskirts of like that main factory structure that we were looking at sorting, for instance. So you can look to grab that, loot the remainder, and that's also another advantage of like why you should look for that split if you're focusing on something like that.
Certainly, absolutely. So that kind of covers Luminosity and exactly what we saw from them. Earlier on, we didn't get to talk about some of the drops that we've seen so far. Of course, we're going to be keeping track of them throughout all 6 games today, as well as all 6 tomorrow. We did have G2 heading Fisher, and I think we saw them, by the time we caught them, they were Skyhook South heading towards Skyhook Choke down towards Hill Valley. Possible that was a lot of Fisher fast loot and then all the way up to Skyhook. I don't know if there's all entirely enough time for that.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. But also we did see Gambit at sorting, and we not only saw them drop sorting, but we saw them hold sorting roof for, I would say, the bulk of the game until they were forced into those staircases.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of teams actually, those who were able to weasel their way in towards sorting were willing to hold on to the factory longer than I thought they would, considering that the circle hinted otherwise pretty quickly. Right? It wasn't one of those like, oh, it's a 50-50, and if the new patch maybe mixes it up. It was pretty clear that it probably wasn't going to be the case there. So we'll see if that continues, I feel like, for a lot of these teams. And also, I can't help but feel like we got one of the most, what I would say is still a really good circle and really cool circle to be able to see the fight over. When you think of like the rotational problems it created, we were talking about Fuel Depot and Sorting Factory and how hard those are going to be able to deal with. But because everybody was already so worried about Sorting Factory so early, those 2 points as a like bottleneck problem to deal with throughout the game weren't ever really a problem. Like where you see the, how does this team deal with this? You know what I mean? It became, everybody was already in those conflict moments a little bit earlier than normal.
Which brings up a great point that I wanted to ask you about. With what we saw, we talked about in the pregame, the playstyle of Europe being a slower, more methodical, a earlier rotate.
Yeah.
I think what you just mentioned kind of backs up the fact that we really saw teams get in early. Granted, I think the actual circle itself forced that a bit more.
Yeah.
But would you agree that we're kind of seeing what we expected to see playstyle-wise from
Yeah, I think so. And I think also the popularity of Gibraltar, right? Like we came into this knowing Gibraltar was going to be played, clearly. How much we didn't know. We thought there might be a little bit of a regional influence. And yes, we're only getting the sample of Europe so far. But, I mean, from our at least perspectives we got that last game, I'd be willing to say 75% pick rate. Like he was almost, it seemed like every composition.
Which is interesting because the highest we've seen was, I believe, maybe T1 scrims, maybe week 2. We saw like 58.6%, pushing 60. And we're like, wow, this is a high Gibby pick rate.
Yeah.
But I think, and that was a European scrim.
Yeah.
So to now see that it's pushing what looks like it could be even higher is interesting, and we'll have to see if that's the case through the rest of the evening. And then also, of course, we're going to get a look, which is fantastic to see NA right away. And NA, once they get out of bed, they're going to be watching these scrims too.
No, and it will be cool to see day 1 and day 2 mix-ups, but also to see if North America does have a very different playstyle, because Yeah, as I said before, I do think that the whole patch, not only does World's Edge complement EU a little bit better, but then I would argue post-Charged Rifle nerf, the game also complemented their playstyle a little bit better. With the Charged Rifle, it being so threatening as it was, I think the NA in your face would have worked because like it could threaten at that distance too, so where you might be able to find that push, but now it very much plays into it. And that's why I said I would love to be able to see them go head-to-head here. But even having them even within their own regions, I think it is cool because we get to decipher a little bit more of those power levels of Europe, because Europe's a problem. We just don't know how much of one, I think is probably the best way to put it.
Another thing that's interesting is we didn't, outside of that early game charge rifle usage that we saw in the Shiv battle, we didn't see too much. Let's take a look at this drop.
No way, man. Third game in a row for LG, and Luminosity, this drop went right over Refinery in the epicenter, and they still got it for free.
Yeah,
and that means that everybody had the opportunity to scout how many people dropped on Refinery, and they should know it was an isolated case there. So what I'm trying to highlight here is, man, that's insane. But second of all, this is probably like worst case if I am Luminosity to hide that strategy, because this dropship was the most likely to give that information to everyone else as soon as possible.
And they're seeing a solo presumably hit Refinery as long as they're free camming to some extent.
And that happened in game 2, not game 10, right? Which is like, that removes that time sensitivity problem and a lot of other things.
So maybe this is the game that gave that information, and a team will be confident enough, or maybe multiple teams will be confident enough, especially if we see another performance from Luminosity Gaming. Now, keep in mind, if you're just joining us, first of all, welcome to the GLL Apex Legends Series. So glad you're hanging out with us. As Paula mentioned on the desk, it is a cold, cold, stormy night in Stockholm, but we have game after game, 12 games total tonight of Apex across Europe and North America, and we are so glad you are joining us here. Bravo alongside Dreadnought, once again, calling the action for some great and some of the best Apex Legends teams in the world. In game number 1, it was Papega Squadron, the guys on your screen here, who get the win. They get 21 points on the board, including eliminations. LG in second with 15. Alliance did get third with 11 points. But back to LG, reason I bring all that up is because if LG continues to perform on the board, someone's going to need to challenge that, if not by the end of day 1, at least by day 2.
Very much so. And, you know, things do look pretty good here when looking at our first place team here so far. Armor leaving a little bit to be desired, but having the opportunity to make their way through what is going to be those vaults. And talking about the vault, you were yet to see if there has been any interest towards the vault itself. I believe we just, I think that was just going to be a turbo. I thought for a second we might see a Scotia red there and be the key, but
this is the first time we've seen the drop from This Is the Way. I just pew pew.
Oh, there's a vault key. Here we go. Hot drops have the opportunity. Sitting just on the outskirts of it too.
And not bad even heading into the vault here. Already sitting on a purple and a blue as well, so certainly going to be looking pretty good.
I mean, Havoc as well with the turbocharger. Really good look there coming out from them. As long as nobody's threatening here, because this is a strategy.
Keep in mind, we did have 2 teams that were dropping Lava City and scrims, and actually it's a great switch here over to Kick, because right now in Lava Field. Now they're not too far away from that choke and that vault as well, and we could see these 2 teams meeting up against each other. We also had Virtus Pro that was a Lava City drop. We'll have to see exactly if they've already moved out of there. So there's certainly some opportunity for early engagements based on that information we have on not only scrims, but also game 1 drops.
I'd like everybody at home to take note. When you enter the vault, not everybody goes in the vault and just rushes and picks everything up.
You mean it's not a race every time?
Somebody's scouting on the outside.
That's
They're
weird.
defending for your team just in case somebody's willing to approach. Yeah, it's weird. You don't want a Caustic to just follow up and just throw an ult in there and just be like, see you, nerds?
I thought it was always a starting line, like a horse race.
No, yeah, and that's why I'm an Octane, man. Just
there you go.
I can beat you to the back every time, boys.
You could also throw a jump pad right before that door opens and send some people flying, which I've also seen. Yeah, works pretty well. I've seen it. Checking out back on board with the guys here on Papega Squadron. It's going to be Balin G, Forsaken, and Fjellder. And as a reminder, 13th place for them in Poland. Pretty international squad here. Fjellder hailing from Norway, Forsaken from Latvia, Balin G, hometown crowd here from Sweden.
We should get this house maybe.
It's got to be a little bit difficult. I feel like if you aren't, you know, a Swedish player here, as we are going to be eking into a little bit later hours of the night. I'll be completely honest, I don't have the local time on me right away.
Also, any sense of what time it is here.
Yeah. To be frank, we've been in Sweden like 24 hours, so I'm like, yeah, time doesn't exist.
All we know is we're in game 2 of day 1 for Europe, and we got a lot more games coming.
We are in a literal wraith void, it feels like, eternally.
We did, now LG heading towards Overlook, we just saw another team, I believe it was I didn't exactly catch which team it was, but there was another team that was heading north into Overlook. So potentially LG going to find themselves in another early engagement.
And if you get caught on the main loot section of Outlook itself, like you can't get past it, right? There is a literal section like with that circular building on the very outskirts of it that you can kind of get yourself trapped in pretty quickly here. See if that ends up becoming a problem, as it seems like Samsung may have found themselves a bit of a struggle.
Early portal down, yeah.
Yeah, early portal, and he's even forcing at least some kind of healing there on path.
And that's going to get, we already saw 2 teams right away. You know they have beacons as well, as they're already heading into Overlook, and Overlook is going to get nasty real soon. There's a lot of places that you do want to set up early in back Overlook. As we look at those silos, there's certain places you can't set up early, so we'll keep an eye on that action off screen as well, just because Overlook is not a huge place. If we look at the back actual cliffside corners of those silos at Overlook, that can get pretty busy pretty quick, and those seats get taken awfully early.
Yeah, they very much can be a game of musical chairs that you don't want to be a part of.
Right.
We did see Reciprocity, I believe, just taken, it was, I think, a scout shot, a couple of shots trickling in from behind them, but they didn't seem to have too much interest as they make their way over. We haven't gotten that good look of what the circle is, but based on everybody's movement, this has to be a very east, about middle elevation.
We did get a quick look, beacon-wise, at pulling hard Overlook.
Okay, okay. I was going to say, yeah, because everybody is making their way to that side of the map. And this is the only reason it's so blatantly obvious that it has to be east beyond the rotations is you would never see this many rotations to the eastern aspect outside of your, you know, if that's where you drop close to, like we again see out of Luminosity.
And this is a rotation you and I have talked about. Now, overhead-wise, this looks like a pretty difficult one from something like Epicenter or Capital City or even Geyser up into Overlook, but there is a lot of elevation changes on the way to Overlook. So the teams at Overlook are not going to be scouting far off into the distance. They're essentially waiting for teams to come over those hills, past those rocks, into Overlook. That's where it starts to get hairy. Now, all that said, once again, not a large area to fight over. And you can bet that there's teams that already have back Overlook. We're going to ask the observers in the back to keep an eye on which teams might already be set up at Overlook, because based on the 2 movements we saw from LG as well as the other squad, someone's already there.
Yeah, and look at this, already there, sitting on the outside of Overlook. We've already got Maydi sitting in a pretty good position here.
So my guess has to be that if we take a look here at this side with Maydi, this is the Wizen team. They know that back Overlook is taken. There's no way you would set up in these center buildings, which are open to 4 sides plus a variety of sidelines across the map. So that means that back Overlook is taken by at least 1 team. Those 3 silos, someone likely already is set up there, without a doubt. Now we take a look at actually Luminosity Gaming there for just a second to see exactly where they were. But now here with Kick Esports as well.
And you know, this circle, at least based on the bits and pieces, now that I've spent a little bit of time, we get to see the outskirts, so I can start to begin to imagine it. I'm not confident it's going to be just into that of the Overlook, because if you see, it pulls a little bit more to the west. So I think it's likely going to be Cap East outskirts or just to the north, that train entryway. If you know that big channel where the train can kind of move through, I think it's very likely to see something happen in there or on that outskirts of Epicenter itself.
It was Papega Squadron and LG. Unsurprisingly, the 2 teams we saw there rotating the earliest who have held the back of that zone. So question is, just to follow up your last point, Dread, if they're going to be forced out of that back area. Now back on board here with Shiv and team.
Yeah, having a bad time there, as it's going to be a Gibraltar ultimate being thrown down along with Caustic trying to get at least some zoning opportunity there with his poison. Should be enough to be able to get the res, because Kick is actually the team who ended up throwing that Gibraltar ultimate down, and they're receiving pressure, I believe, from the southeastern side. That grenade was enough to get the knock onto Shiv right after the res came through. The question is do they have enough time to be able to confirm that knock? And likely with that pressure behind, I don't think Kick has what it takes. They're going to try and kick their way into this house. But
no shields across the whole squad. I believe a fast kill does come down, but now it's VP with this high ground here, shooting into the area you just mentioned. The guys at home, this is the area we're referring to as the Capital City eastern outskirts that we so often see teams have to traverse through, but VP with some very good sidelines and high ground against that area right now. This is the high ground that we were talking about that make it difficult to kind of push through. It gives a lot of elevation to this side, of course.
Yeah, and what this is just to the right-hand side, a little bit lower from the perspective we got there on Not. That is that train entryway, right? And that's what produces that elevation that can kind of of change this, what seems like a very almost, you know, plateaued ground to be very much a elevation problem, or not so much a problem but an advantage.
Yeah, Samsung needs to play this really slow because right now they're even further to the west, trying to push into these eastern outskirts.
Yeah.
They do not have great lines. They know that there might be pressure from further east, further west, excuse me, from Capital City, and they found themselves on not the biggest rock on the map, and you could already tell that they're realizing they're going to need to rotate out of this.
Yeah, they are realizing that they're going to have to make some kind of transition, and it is going to be sitting on the outskirts of between Outlook and Capital East. There's those series of rocks, and that double rock system, that is, I believe, going to be the very final circle here. And as you pointed out, Samsung has a lot to prove there. Look at this, though. VP, no surprise. This is something we said last game. I think it's every time we've watched Virtus Pro play together. These guys are very smart with their decision-making, already sitting in what is right next to going to be that final position and defending it out. And Noth, as always, there sitting with his scout, man.
Yep, got the 3X on it.
Also got the double tap this time. That's a very different tale than last game there for Noth.
Also now on the Gamers Origin side, sitting a little bit prettier than what we saw the scenario of them for game number 1. Now also making their push to the north as well. Going to try to grab this world loot.
Mastiff?
Thinks about the Mastiff. Goes ahead and grabs the Digi threat though. So now back on board with Soar. Everyone slowly making their way into this side of the map. Gibby ult here as well for the Reciprocity EU side.
Yeah, they're defending one of those two rocks kind of on the outskirts here. Circle did just move in with round number 3. Shots go through that. Easy! 108 to the head and then a double tap there. 64 headshot. See you, Nerd. Reciprocity looking good.
And that's what we're talking about with the scout usage. Not only do we expect it to see, we're hearing from pro players once again anecdotally, we're seeing it more in Europe, but that's the perfect case of what we would call mid to even close range scout usage to pick up those shots. You get the angle with that high ground. Expect to see more of that throughout today and tomorrow.
Another gun, the weapons, or excuse me, not the weapons I've been talking about, the pros have been talking about. Flatline sitting with the Anvil hammer, right? It's actually insane. Anvil, single fire flatline is a ridiculous amount of damage.
If weapons could talk, they would be talking about flatline.
Yeah, they would be.
Yep. Now checking once again, VP. Good news for them. They haven't needed to change much. They're all sitting on blues, but once again, with the high ground, and going to let teams come up from Capital City, eastern outskirts, from that choke, all the way up towards them as well. And they know that more teams are going to be coming across from the middle of the map, even closer to Capital City as well.
Yeah, and with the perspective we just saw there from Fnatic, they're actually sitting more into the Outlook. And I want to just raise the circle problem at hand here. We very clearly, Outlook is still all in to some extent, but we don't know if that has to be it, right? There's still a lot of area sitting on the western side that it could focus around. If you'd commit to the eastern side right now, you're in a really good position if it lands on the eastern side, but if it doesn't, you're in a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah, and I believe it's Papega Squadron who LG is continually pinging in the back of Overlook.
Yes.
And it's Papega Squadron who's going to have to, it's a great, like you said, it's a great spot to be, but as you could just see on your screen right now, there's not a lot of ways out. You're going through essentially a choke to get out of your spot, to get back really into the play. Those back Overlook silos are totally cut off from the rest of the map on that cliffside.
It is so pressing that I'd be willing to argue in 25 seconds we're going to see the conclusion of the round, right, and see the identification of the circle. I think it is as soon as possible, do not even slightly hesitate, a second level of rotation when they do have that information, because if you fail to commit and it is an eastern side, like I said, it's going to be a very big problem, and time is not going to be your ally. Reciprocity, though, do have a pretty good position for the closing here of round number 3.
And they're looking at LG, so LG is the one that needs to rotate. LG is looking even further back towards Papega Squadron, so things are going to get real interesting real soon. And also wondering, Papega Squadron, if we'll see them, are they going to wraith out? There's enough cover that they could even zip out if they needed to, but that's going to be real loud and also expose them quite a bit. I'm expecting them to wraith portal out if things get hairy.
Kick here is the team that we were looking inside the building that was just being looked at there by the last perspective we had, the scout shots coming through. They're just going to be sitting there posted up. VP still sitting more on the outskirts here. And so far, I think, you know, depending on what the next circle is, I like VP and Luminosity's positioning the most. I feel like they have a lot of opportunity. VP, I think, has more to prove because the circle has transitioned a bit more into Overlook.
Right.
But again, I feel like so much is this. What do we figure out here, and what are the decisions? Because this is to the left or to the right, the east or the west, and the answer is to the east.
That's right. It pulls all the way in, so it's not going to be too much work for the LGs and the Papega Squadrons. However, VP is going to need to move just a bit over. Based on what we've seen so far, also no gold armors on this side, so they're going to be going up against some fast heals without a doubt on the other squad. But right now, they still have an okay positioning to see how things play out over this next minute of play.
You can see that Noth has concerns that most of the initiations that they're going to be taking is going to be still at that distance, that they aren't too concerned to be forced into that bottleneck as long as he remains in that single fire. As Limek here still with his Mastiff.
He questioned the Mastiff decision, but in the end, he did grab it.
Yeah. And
we saw the double take.
I think it makes sense. You know, it's a weapon that can really make or break, and it is kind of the how am I feeling, what's my play style.
Especially because it did pull further to the east, and we are seeing building interiors become a big part of this end circle.
Yeah, and then the Mastiff becomes the guard dog it was built to be.
Absolutely now. I don't think anyone would complain about that 99 Mastiff combo in this battle. I did see, though, on Twitter that ACU had a nightmare, that the 99 was removed from the game.
That's a nightmare?
Yeah. For him, it certainly.
Yeah.
If you watch his stream,
no, that's true. Him and Hal both with that 99. My goodness, the control.
So once again, now on the Wizen side, Maydi here, the Triumph Succubus squad. Succubus 19th there in Poland. Now checking back in, though.
Papega squad sitting really good. Also have a jungle gym there.
Right, and keep in mind they are on the two westernmost silos. If they were scooched further back on those silos, they'd be in a little bit of trouble. This is where you want to hold at this point in the game. They're sitting still doing pretty well because of exactly how that circle is pulling right now.
And we've been talking a bit about some of those lose-lose scenarios and some of those chokes. It seems like right now is the first good perspective of one of those that we've got. 15 seconds till the circle forces in. The 3v3 here is Shiv.
Not good for these guys.
Trying to find a way out. Can he get out from that nade? He gets through the portal, but he's already knocked.
Already knocked and is going to go all the way back, and we'll see if the team is forced back as well. Presumably that will be the case. Chuck on board with them, but Shiv did on the receiving end of a knock. We didn't see anything else in the kill feed, though, so they might be okay. Still back on board with Virtus Pro, and they are right back on this high ground.
And VP has an opportunity to move down and give a lot of focus into that team, and they've been looking at that team for the past 3 minutes, so I think they might be focused on doing that. We'll see if they do, because if they do, it might set them back, but now making a pretty big Hail Mary rotation here. Reciprocity, they throw down the bubble, go with the Phoenix, full Phoenix even, got to go off, and they make their way in.
They do, and they get away with it. We'll have to see. Wacko takes a little bit of damage, but he is popping a bat, so now back on the board side with Kick in this battle, and it looks like right now it's going to be Anarchy who goes down.
There is a portal trying to get the way out of there if they would like to do so, and it should be noted that everybody in here is dead right now. I know it looks good and we're worried about the fight, but how does anybody make it out of this position once they get done with this? I don't know if there's enough distance based on the fact that we're already in round 5. They could go through the zip upward, but once they get into that, there's basically everybody's going to be sitting above them, and you're just walking into death zone, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you do here once you're in the train?
And we are now here taking a look at Overlook once again. Further west, and now we still have quite a bit of that furthest east building still in it as well, so it does have an opportunity for a team to try to set up there if they're able to get through. Now Gamers Origin, once again, still sitting all purple, and they have fenced off that, just like you said, Dread, there's no way that there was something good waiting up that zip. Really, you could say that at any point in the game, but certainly the case right now. Getting up, I don't think teams even want to find out.
No, it's bad enough that I'd be willing to say, like you heard me basically calling, is like, it doesn't matter if you win this fight because you aren't getting much farther, right? Because you have already set yourself up.
And that is the only up, right? Both sides of the tunnel are no longer in.
No, both sides of the tunnel are going to be closed out. It's going to be a tough time. We'll see. We got 25 seconds, though, until that circle does move in, and whether or not the death of the train becomes a real tale here.
Tough for JMW, rocking the JMW key tag. Still on that white armor. Only player I believe we've seen in the game still on white. And that's a good move, though.
Really great portal positioning.
Yeah.
Sitting just on the backside there so nobody can get an angle. But we do know that Papega Squad has been sitting here waiting for this moment for about 45.5 minutes. Welcome to the game, boys.
And they are ready for that. They whether they heard that portal or they saw the player first, doesn't really matter. They are ready to challenge and land down some shots, especially here fielding with that 99 as well. They do see zips up to the top silos.
Yeah, Balin took it, but he noped out real quick. And look at this, VP taking a 3-man push right on in.
And an early one as they get forced all the way over now.
Gibraltar ultimate.
Squads left.
It's available if they want to try and make that threat. They're going to go ahead and Noth kind of just rain bullets here onto the targets on the outside. He does only find one knock. Gets a nice slide here over to the other side.
Look at this angle they've got.
Oh my goodness, just making it rain. How do you stop this? They have to get off the roof at this point. Grenade's going to come in a matter of seconds. Watson putting up the fence, but she's going to need a generator if they hold their own there.
And this is the vantage point that these silos give you. This is where you want to be. You can even they can even scoot back just a bit. Right away, they take down the gen as well. They've got more where that came from. There goes the ult from Gibby. More headshots. Look at that. Gets the knock before the ult even hits at a Noth.
See how much he gets there when it comes to the ultimate itself. That's
oh boy, that Watson fence ain't going to do too well there.
Yeah, but they need to zip over. They're going to make the threat, but they can't zip over because Papega Squad can make a play. And here we see the Gibraltar shield bubble goes down. They're going to have a res opportunity if they'd like to do so. but still something to prove is Pepega looking good here.
Yeah, and things are still getting right. We saw the Pepega squadron, they got lucky with that pull for the ring, but everyone else is also getting it. They know that someone's below them, and who else but Luminosity Gaming. XN's respawn is going to time out, though, so it's just as Desu and Sanaya, who are directly below Pepega Squadron.
And again, about no other roster, I am more concerned about being in a 2 versus 3 other than this one. There is no such thing as out of the match quite yet here for this group.
I was actually wondering if it might be the case. I was saying that this outer building right here on the east actually might become part of it, and a few teams were able to sneak through, presumably through a portal, able to get over there.
But again, it has such difficult chokes outwards, right? This team on the other side, once this Gibraltar bubble goes down, there's very little choices you can make outward outside of a portal, and you've got 7 seconds before you're forced to do so. The portal is going to end, the bubble is going to end in about 5 seconds, and when that does that, it's the all-in play here. We see them try and make that transition before that threshold happens. We'll see if they end up succeeding, but for now, VP here still holding the high ground.
Yep, and they did get that zip over after those shots, and that ult was so effective. Everyone going to be flying in here. Things are going to get pretty thin momentarily as they're forced all down into this smaller area.
Think about the rotation that we've seen for Virtus.pro to get themselves into this position. It has been such clean and calculated play there as they go ahead and clean up shop. One more squad down here on the stairs.
And that was the shots that were coming from VP. We just saw the receiving end of those as that team is eliminated there off screen. And I believe that is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, the side of Mady and JMW on the Wizen team. They will be out now. 5 squads remaining. And some heals coming in here from the Samsung Morning Stars as they do not have a lot of room to work with, Tread.
No. The res is going to come through. There's the Watson generator, so no grenades. That's a very big moment to be able to breathe there, at least here for reciprocity, as the Orax ends up getting up. Looking at the other side, though, the first perspective we got, it did seem like Caspers was able to get up and survive. But VP here still sitting on the high ground here. There it is. Now actually VP's perspective on the high ground. I mean, it's their game to lose at this point, it feels like. I don't really see a major counterpoint. They've got themselves Peacekeeper, 99. They're all looted up. The only problem is purples aren't across the board.
Right. Absolutely. No gold armor there either, but that choked PK there, purple bolt as well for it. Like you said, should have them set up pretty well. They were able to get 1 purple out of that push. Probably would have asked for more than that after making that zip over.
So one thing that, to be honest, I haven't mentally logged once more, just because I lost it on the action, is did we see the Wraith on the VP roster? Because if not, this is where I would say not having a Wraith is the biggest setback. Wraith's good in the early to mid, but she's absolutely unstoppable in the end. And that is the reason
they know
she's such a high priority.
They're going to go ahead and drop down on Samsung Morningstar, just spraying with that 99. No kills coming in just yet. Looks like a knock there. Comes in. Casper goes down.
Question is did we see Wraith trying to go out the other side, but no, wasn't able to survive. Good cleanup there for Pepega. And again, Virtus.pro, is the Wraith there?
And it was, it was not free. Look at the amount of bats that had to go down there. Good coordinated effort, though. They didn't panic. They eventually found out, luckily earlier rather than later, that Samsung Morningstars was upstairs. Some decent shots. We'll see if that thermite hits as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty big trade to get 57. Gibraltar ultimate going down. Knock is already dead. PJ is already knocked as well. Taylor's the only person alive here. Now for Virtus.pro, a massive change of the tides here in our second game is Reciprocity now defending out of the circle. We see Nesh end up going through the portal. Now he's in the death zone. Can he get back through the portal? The Watson trap stopped him. No, he ends up almost getting through. And he goes down. I think they did it all the way from under that house. Oh my goodness. Wait, Soar?
Fuck. That was a third place screen from Soar. That was a third place screen from Soar, if I'm not mistaken.
Hello?
So we need to see exactly where that banner went, but I'm pretty sure we just saw a third place for Soar.
I have no idea. I have no idea who won that. Whoever the team was underneath VP in that house, I believe clutched that out. I do not remember that team's name off the top of my head.
We did not get a chance to catch it. We're going to find out. Of course, we're going to look for some clips as well.
Somebody hook me up. Champions of the Arena is the Gibraltar on the left-hand side. It's PS. It's Pepega. Well, it's Pepega.
They do it again.
How?
They do it again.
So was Pepega underneath? Pepega had to have been the squad underneath them in that home. That went with the 57 shot. That had to have been Pepega.
Yeah,
because, and to think about, it took 57 damage.
Yep.
Like, I mean, it took 57 damage from the hip out of an R99 that was accidental, just looking for information after a very dominant, controlled top half, like completely calculated. The second we look over, everybody's dead.
Yep.
Everybody is dead. And you saw like
we're hearing now from production. It was a VP win.
Shut the front door.
Which if the last time we had seen VP on screen, They only had one player alive. Let's see exactly who it was. It was Taylor.
With 25 HP on the Watson diving away
towards the circle.
While the Gibraltar just got knocked after... I don't believe it.
And it was Taylor. We're gonna have to find out if we can. We're gonna try to get the clip, but it was VP.
I need my analyst.
From production.
Save me. What happened there? My goodness.
By the way, no Wraith for them.
Which is such a dread. I know what you've said. I know what you think, and you can go ahead and eat it all because you're stupid. The fact that you were able to clutch at the highest level of competitive Apex any game without a Wraith,
right? While other teams. Right.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That being said, let's put it reasons why. There are some elements that should justify that, right? Like Kings Canyon circles and playstyle promoted endgame portal problems to be more prominent. So that is a part of the reason that I think it's more likely to be able to see that the Wraith won't thrive in this environment as much.
Yep.
But it still seems, because of the rotations through the mid, mixed with the what if that could happen on most of those circles, that it still should be, I mean, under 10% of games, if any. And the fact that we even got one blew my mind.
Absolutely. Guys on the desk, what... Onset Glitter.
Help me.
Paula, help us.
Guys,
absolute insanity at
being
Overlook.
the most qualified expert here, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have no idea what just happened. Glitter and Onset, over to you in the studio.
Okay. All right, so this is what happened. So we were watching VP, and they were pretty far west of where the zone was about to end.
I think we tell the VP story here. From what we were looking at, we were watching VP pretty closely.
Exactly. And so, you and I are having some back and forth, and we see that they have to push in east in order to get somewhere. But at the time, there weren't really any good spots for them to take, right?
Yeah.
And so... I'm sitting there going, they got to zip in. And you're like, no, last time they did this, like, they died. Like,
well,
it's such a bad idea.
In the first game, they all three zipped, and they all got melted immediately. Now, in my brain, which I feel is fairly logical a lot of the time, when there's 15 teams still alive, and you are zipping to the highest point of the map, someone has to shoot you, right?
Doesn't happen.
No one shoots them. They take down the team opposite them, who was, I believe, Lazarus, who was on top of the building.
Well, they cleared Alliance as soon as they got to the top of the
And they managed to clear Alliance, and I'm just like... How is this working? Like, there is no way that no one is looking at them, no one is putting shots down on them, and it was their only play as well. As we talked about, they're not playing a Wraith, so they couldn't portal under a building, they couldn't portal inside a building, they couldn't do anything to get into an end zone there. And how they won the game? I don't know. I still don't know.
So they clear Lazarus on the roof across from them. Then they somehow get on top of that building. Under them is Pepega Squadron, which I think that's a team that we all thought
we were expecting them to be able to win that game
at the end, because as the circle got really, really small, I could have sworn we saw VP getting pushed right by the zone and taking some damage to them and unable to escape it. Then it all just kind of exploded in the final circle, and I think that Wade's reaction was kind of how everybody over here was like, wait.
But that's the thing as well. We were like, out of all of the teams here, you would expect someone who has a Wraith to be able to survive longer than a team who doesn't, and VP obviously doesn't. I think we've highlighted that enough now, but somehow someone stayed alive long enough for VP to win that game, and I would love to see it from their point of view, to see exactly what happened. Obviously, we didn't have every single POV available, but the plays that they made in the build-up to that, they were ballsy. They were like brave plays, and they paid off for them. I don't think they're going to be able to do that again. I think people are going to be wise to that, and they're going to be more wise to the fact that they don't have a Wraith, and the only way that they can be mobile in those latter circles without walking in is going to be using a zipline.
I think the other thing that they did really well, though, was right at the end, was they allowed Pepega to kind of clear a bunch of those other players out for them. They held up on top of the building for as long as humanly possible, because we saw Pepega step out, and they took out, I think it was Samsung that was under the building. Yeah. They cleared them to make sure they didn't have to worry about them being there. They were smart. They were really, really smart. I need to know how it happened.
The only thing is, maybe one of them had a gold knockdown shield who managed to out-survive someone in the circle. That's the only way that maybe happened, and they managed to time that res at just the right time.
We have to
maybe that's the play that happened. As I say, we don't have every POV, so we're kind of speculating at this point. But, I mean, I'm more impressed with the fact that they took that game on their shoulders in the build-up to that end circle. Yeah. I don't think it should have worked.
But it did.
But it worked.
Guys, I must say... I 100% agree.
I mean...
Our second game of the day...
That's what you told us just before you allowed us to say it, yeah.
If we're not mistaken, Virtus Pro take the second game of the day. A very exciting finish to that match, and we'll have to see you guys shortly to talk a bit more, because for now, we will head to a small break.